Thank you everyone for coming, first and foremost. So in this webinar, we'll be covering the basic uses of Xero and how we can use it, tips and tricks, running through various different areas to give everyone an overview of how it works. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. But my name is Scott and I work in the cloud accounting department of Hillier Hopkins as the assistant cloud accounts manager. I've been working with Xero for 10 years, so I like to think that I know it pretty well. So what we'll cover during the session is how to rate. So we'll go through sales invoices, purchase invoices, bank reconciliations as well, a brief overview of reports, a bit of payroll, as well as some other apps and things like that we can cover. As Kirsten mentioned, if you could please put any questions you have in the chat box, and what I'll do at the end of each section is I'll pick some from that list, and I will come back to them on the recording, and I will answer any after the webinar if I've missed any out. Cool. So what I'll do is I'll start sharing my screen, and we will begin. So hopefully everyone can see and read my screen. If you have any problems, just pop something in the chat box and we'll go and I'll see what I can do for you. Cool. So if we begin, so when you log into Xero, initially you'll be given a screen such as this, which is called the dashboard. And on the dashboard, you'll see you've got whatever company you're logged into, your dashboard, and a few other options up here, which we'll run through later. And you'll see you've then got your company at the top. So with the company you're logged into again. We then have your bank accounts generally as default will be on the left-hand side. So you see you've got a business bank and a savings account. On the right-hand side, the layout will be an account watch list, which you can completely customize, and we'll run through that shortly. What you'll also see is you've got your invoices owed to you, which is essentially your sales, and your bills you need to pay, which is your purchases. What you can do within Xero is you can actually customize the layout of this dashboard as well. So what you'll see up here is you've got an edit dashboard button at the top right corner. If you click on that, what you can do is you can drag and drop and rearrange these items however way possible you want. You can also choose to whether to show it on the dashboard at all by ticking and unticking the show box. One thing you must make sure you do whilst you do this, once you've updated everything, is click save, or it won't save the changes that you've just made. So what you can then do, so with the account watch list, is if you click on these three dots, what that allows you to do is to add some specific nominal codes which you want to keep an eye on. So you'll see, for example, you've got sales. Anything in Xero which is highlighted in blue when you hover over it or is already in blue is hyperlinked. So if you wanted to see a breakdown of the 135313 right there, if you click on it, what that will do is it will take you to a report which tells you what that figure's made up of. Going back to the account watch list, you'll see here you can edit it. So you can edit your account watch list as well. So you can add or remove accounts at any point in time. So if I click on edit, it will take you to this page, which is essentially your chart of accounts listing. So that will give a list of all of your accounts. So say you want to decide to keep an eye on purchases. If you simply click on purchases, and you will see a tick box which says show on dashboard watch list. If you tick that and then click save, and then you go back to your dashboard, you'll see that purchases will now appear in that list. So what you can also add to your watch list is you see we've also got total cash in and out. So that is basically a summary of, and it's on live data on what cash you've had in and out the bank accounts within that month. You can also further customize this dashboard by adding certain specific ratios. So if you go into accounting at the top, you then have reports. Within reports, you then have a section which is called business performance. If you go into there, you'll then get a list of different ratios. So usually a lot of people like to keep an eye on their gross profit. So if you click on the little star next to each of the ones you want to see on the dashboard, so if you star gross profit and net profit on net sales, and then if you go back to the dashboard, what you'll see is a little section at the top, which shows you that on the dashboard, and we'll do it for the current month and the previous 11. So a rolling 12 months to show you the trends in the up and down of the gross profit and net profit or whatever ratios you choose to be able to see. In terms of the dashboard, that is pretty much everything. I'd like to open to any questions. If you could pop them in the chat. If you don't, if we're all good, I will carry on. I'll give you just a few seconds. I can see that Martina's just asked if you can add it directly to the dashboard. I think I've just covered that. Please pop me another message if you'd like to run through again. That's all good by me. Cool. So it looks like we're pretty happy. So we will then make a start on sales invoicing. And this is where the fun begins. I know there are a lot of people who still do invoicing manually, which if you're doing it manually, this could be completely life-changing for you and save you absolutely heaps of time. So within Xero, you can raise your invoices directly. So you can add a new sales invoice by clicking new sales invoice on the dashboard. You can do it using this plus button at the top. So if you click on the plus, you can create a new invoice from here. And you can also add a new invoice by going into business and invoices. And you'll see you've got a new invoice button at the top. Usually the simplest way and quickest way is to go into new sales invoice on the dashboard. You will then be presented with this screen. It can look in two different ways. So Xero are actually currently trying to modernize how it looked from before. So this is the new view. So this is the new view of how to raise sales. If you might be presented with this classic invoicing view as well. So I'll just go with it on the classic invoicing box, on the classic invoice view, because essentially all of the boxes are the same. So your to box would be your customer. So ABC. So if you start typing, it will bring a drop down of all of the suppliers or customers or contacts which have those letters within it. So ABC Furniture. Your date will default to today's date, but you can then change that if you wish. So say you wanted it to invoice back in January or whenever the date may be. Your due date. So what you can do with your due date is you can actually set up the settings in Xero to say our invoice due date is always 30 days after the date in this box. And what will happen is that the due date will auto populate. So it will it will say, oh, 30 days from this date. It will work it out for you and put the date in there for you. But you can also put plus 30 in there, and that will also do the same thing. Your invoice number is also generated, but what it won't do is let you have the same invoice number twice to prevent duplication. And generally, you're not allowed to have the same invoice number twice because HMRC may get a bit funny about that if they're ever to inspect your books and records. Your reference box, you can put a PO number or anything you wish in here. So say it was for a certain site, or your customers said they want it to be for a certain place, you can put, so just using site as an example, or area. So you can put north. Your branding theme is essentially the invoice template you want to use, and we'll cover those very shortly. Your item box would be if you sell stock. So you can set up a very basic stock system within Xero. So say you could sell some golf balls. You type in how many quantity you sold. So a pack of 6, you sold 3 of those. Or you could always put 1, or whatever the case may be. Your unit price is how much you're going to sell them for, excluding VAT. Any discount percentage, whatever nominal code you want it to go to. So if you had golf balls, you wanted a separate sales code, you could always start typing golf balls or select from a list. Oh, sorry, but we don't have that code because it's a demo company, so you can actually select which code you want this to go to. And it does it all in little sections for you. So here are your revenue codes, here are your equity codes, and so on. That always has to be populated. And what you'll see is it will then populate the tax rate based on your default. But you can also change this. So say you do some zero-rated income, so you send stuff abroad, or you have some exempt income as well, depending on whatever industry you're in. You'll see you've then got region. And if you drop that box down, what that allows you to do is to select a region. So say I've got North up the top. You'd want to select North here, and what you can do with this is essentially do some reporting and show income for that particular region or project or whatever this box is, because this box is completely customizable. You could have it as certain projects, you could have it as certain properties even, you could have it as certain sites, whether you have multiple sites and so on. You can then add separate lines. So you wanted shipping as an example, you could type in these boxes, shipping, and say it was for 1, the unit price. So say it was, oh, just tabbed along, sorry, it was £50. You type £50 in there, and you might even have a separate shipping code which would come up if there was a code for it, and you can then select shipping from that list and then populate all the other information as well. Once you're happy with your invoice, you've got a save button, and what that will do is it will save it as a draft as well. You can also save and submit for approval. So say you raise invoices and you need someone to approve them before they're sent out, or you can save and add another. If you click approve, what that will do is it will approve the invoice, and it will then go into your accounting software as a sale. At the top, you've then got other options, so you can then email the invoice out. So say you click email, it will auto populate the email address that you send it out to. You can also edit this email address at any point if you wanted to, as well as select, so whoever it's sending it from will automatically default to the person logged in. You can also set up email templates as well. So say you wanted to send out an invoice which is overdue, you could select sales invoice overdue, payment reminder, or just the basic version if you're just sending out the invoice for the first time. What you can do is you completely customize this template. That's a bit more of a complex area, so we probably won't cover that today, but if you need any help with that, and we're more than happy to help after the webinar, or if you have any questions later on, we'll be more than happy to help. And what it will do is it will populate the information in these placeholders automatically. You can then mark the file as sent, include it as a PDF, as well as send yourself a copy if you really wanted to. So when you click send, what it will do is it will email a copy of that invoice to your customer. You could also print a PDF, so you can see what the PDF looks like. If you wanted to say you still sent it by post or whatever, if you click mark as sent, it will mark it as sent, or you can leave it as it is. And if I open that, what you'll see is it will then show you a copy of the invoice with all the details in it, and you can customize these, and I'll cover that. You can customize the layout of these, and I'll come on to that briefly a little bit later on. So then going back to what this paper is, say you still raised manual invoices and you wanted to attach a copy of the manual invoice that you scanned, you can just drag and drop or upload the file to here if you wish. So invoice options. So we have a whole range of options in here. So you've got the repeat button, which essentially, if you click on, it allows you to repeat that same invoice. So say it was a subscription, or you invoice rent quarterly or monthly. If you were involved in property, as an example, you can set it to raise that invoice every 3 months. If it's quarterly, the invoice date. So say it was from today's date, and you want it to be whatever the due date is, so 30 days after the invoice date. And you can select an end date of when those invoices stop generating themselves. So if you wanted them to stop generating up to September of this year, you could just select September and it won't create those invoices anymore. You can select to save them as draft, approve straight to approval, so it means you don't even have to get involved. Or you can approve the sending as well, which means it will also automatically send the email to the customer for you. So who that invoice is made to can be populated in here, and that will be based on whatever the figure, whatever the customer is that you typed in. Any reference, so you can insert a placeholder, so you can say for month and year based on whatever that invoice date is. Whether you want to completely customize it is completely up to you, or just have it blank if you wish. You can then edit the wording that you want. You can insert placeholders. So say I took this line out. What you will see then in here, if I go put rent, and you say insert placeholder, oh, where's it gone? There we go. For month and year, and that will then populate it with, say, rent for March 2023 based on this date. What you then do is save, or you can preview the placeholders as well, which will show you how it will look in Xero, how it will look once the invoice is raised, sorry. And if you click save, what it will then do, so you see it's asking you what the placeholders, etc. you want to fill in are for the email. And you then click done. It will generate that invoice now every so often, however frequently you've told it to. And then it should be all good from there. What you can then do, so that's how to raise. So I will then go back into the invoice and I'll show you how you send. So you'll then see in here, you can then void the invoice, which deletes it from Xero completely. You can copy, so you can copy the invoice. Say you want to copy it to a different customer for the exact same thing. So you then want to go to somewhere else. So say you want to invoice it to you want to copy the same invoice, but you want to send it to a different customer. You select which customer you want to send to. And if you copy, you see it will create that invoice for you, automatically filled in with all the values and everything else that are in there. And it will create a whole new invoice. So if I then go back into the invoice again and go through the other options, you can then edit. And what that allows you to do is to edit anything which is on the invoice. So you can change anything on here. So you can change the date and so on. And if you make any changes, you can then click update at the bottom and it will then save those changes. So say I wanted to remove our shipping and I then click update, it will then save that updated value. But updating an invoice which is already generated won't change future repeating invoices. Just so you're aware. You can then add a credit note. So say you come to a different month after you've already closed down your figures. For say January, you've already closed those down and you don't want to change them. You can then add a credit note, date that February and write that off if need be. And what it will do is it will apply that credit note against the invoice that you've clicked add credit note on. So if I approve, so you'll see that the value of the invoice is now 0 because we've added that credit note. And then if you click on credit note, it will take you to a copy of the credit note as well. Cool. So there are various ways that you can view your invoices. So you can either go into invoices owed to you. If you click on that on the dashboard, it will take you to this screen so you can see your drafts, you can see you're awaiting approvals, you're awaiting payments and you're overdue. So if you click on draft, it will take you to all of your draft invoices. At which point, if you click on one, it will show you the detail behind it again. You then have your different sections as well. So you have your all at the top, you have draft, you have your awaiting approval, you're awaiting payment, which ones have been paid and which ones are repeating. So the other ways to get to your invoices is if you go to business and invoices, that will take you to your list of all of your invoices. And you'll then have your draft awaiting approval, as I said earlier. So what you can also do from Xero is say you come to month end, you can actually send your customers statements directly from Xero. So if you click send statements, you can choose to either send an activity. So that will show you invoices and payments separately on a PDF. Or you can, generally that's not going to be very useful unless a customer's got a query on the payments and invoices that you've raised, so that their system doesn't agree to yours. You can do just an outstanding list. So if I then do a print of that, so you'll see you can select and change the date as well. So you can default to today, you can do it to last month, you can do it to whatever date you please. And then once you click update, it will then update that list underneath. So you see that City Limousines is an example. If you tick it on the left-hand side and click email, you can also do multiple in one. So say I wanted to send all 3 and you click email, you put in email addresses and it will send the statement to those individuals. If you then tick 1 and click print, this will be for the branding. If you click OK, so this is how your statement will look to the customer. So it would then list all the outstanding invoices, when they were dated and when they were due, as well as the balance at the bottom. Cool. Going back to our invoices section, you will then see you have also got this option at the top, which is called invoice reminders. What that allows people to do is to automatically send out emails based on the parameters up here. So if you tick this box, you can say you want to send an email to your customer or customers, whenever an invoice is 7 days overdue, whether it's going to be due in 7 days time. So you can choose this option. So you can say due in 7 days if you wanted to be proactive. And then the email underneath will say, thanks for working with us. It's just a gentle reminder or whatever. You can completely customize this, and you can customize these templates in a lot more detail and have the wording to be however you want it to be. And what will happen is when these days come, is that Xero will automatically send out the reminders for you. So if it was during 7 days, when that 7-day period comes up, Xero will ping out an email to that customer and will send them a say whatever your email template refers to. And if you click save at the bottom, that will then start sending emails out to customers. However, please bear in mind when using this, it will not know when invoices have been paid. So you will have to make sure that your bank is up to date. So what you don't want to happen is for an email to go out to say you haven't paid, it's overdue by 7 days. And then your customer comes back to you and go, well, I paid it on here. And because then you'll just end up looking silly. That's not something that anyone wants to look. Cool. So then in terms of searching for invoices, you can use the search function at the top. If it lets me. It isn't available in demo organizations, of course. Because it will then give you the options, type in an invoice number, an amount, a customer name, a supplier name, anything you want. But you can also search for invoices from this screen. So if you click on search, you can search for a number, reference, customer, or amount. You can also search within dates as well at the top. And you can say whether it's any date, just the transaction date, which is the invoice date, or the due date you can search by. As also, in terms of the templates for Xero, the standard invoice template, I know that I mentioned earlier. If I print to PDF and leave as it is again. So you'll see that anything on an invoice template which is sent to your customers can be completely customized. So you can add your logo. You can completely rejig the organization of where all these things are sat within Xero. You can also take items out of this if you wish to. And you can also completely start from scratch and import your own template, which is very complicated. I've done it for multiple clients, and depending on how complex it is, it can take an awful lot of time to get all of the coding right. But if that's something you ever needed help with, again, we'd be more than happy to assist. In terms of searching for invoices, as I mentioned earlier, you can do this in multiple ways. So you can search in the all section. If you go to business and invoices, it will take you to your all section. You can search your all invoices. You can search in all of these different separate tabs, basically. So you see here, you can then search within your awaiting payment items as well. And you can also sort invoices by invoice number, by reference, by alphabetical order if you wanted to, as well as by dates. So you can just click on these options at the top. So if you click it once, it will sort it one way, and if you click it again, it will then sort it the opposite direction. One thing that we found is we can also add payment services. So if you have PayPal and your customers pay into a PayPal, you can add a link, which when you send it out to a customer, when you send the invoice out to a customer, they'll be able to click on Pay Now on their invoice copy, and it will take them to be able to pay. So I will just show you how that works. Bear with me. So you see you've got this now. It says view and pay now. If you click on that, it will take you to a digital version of the invoice. And if you click pay now, what it will then do is it will take you to the link to be able to pay. And what that will do once it's paid is it will mark it as paid in Xero for you automatically, meaning that you don't even have to worry about reconciling it on the bank. It'll already be marked as paid and we'll be good to go. Essentially streamlining your process completely. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover on invoices. I'll just go and have a quick flick through of the questions, just to answer a couple. You can, so I will have a look. So how can I add bank details? So if you wanted to add bank details, if that's to the template, you can do that within templates in Xero, and we can go back to that later on. In terms of email addresses, if you wanted to add your contact details, you can do this straight from this page here. So you'll see you've got your customer name. You can click edit address and you can put their email and any other details in here that you wish. So you can put their street address in there and so on and so forth. And who it is going to be for the attention of, so a name within that box. Does anybody have any further questions? I'll just give you a few seconds, just going to make sure. Cool, I think I covered how to cancel it. Hopefully, you can simply delete the invoice. Deleting the invoice is perfectly fine, as long as you haven't closed down your figures, but just bear in mind, if it's backdated to a previous month, it will change the figures that you finalized if you do finalize them. In terms of department codes, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to. Is there department codes within this region section? Sorry. Let's give you a few seconds. So is it that you'd have, sorry, bear with me. Okay, so what you can do is you can customize this. It doesn't have to say region, it could say department. And you can also have, I believe it's 3 of these different categories within here at any one time. So you could have region and department as well if you wished, which would completely enhance the way you can track things in Xero from a reporting point of view. Hopefully that covers the answer to your question. If not, we can run through it later on, and I will run through any questions that I haven't answered after the webinar is finished. Cool. We'll move on to purchase invoicing. So within purchase invoicing, it is essentially exactly the same as sales invoicing, pretty much, except from you obviously won't send out stuff to customers, etc. So you can get to purchases you can add a new purchase manually, which we don't recommend, by going into this plus button at the top and clicking on bill. You can do it from this button here, from new bill as well. Or you can add a new purchase by going into business and bills to pay and clicking on new bill at the top in exactly the same way. So you'll see that the format is exactly the same as sales, other than you don't have an invoice invoice number box because we don't use invoice numbers. Well, sorry, it isn't actually auto-generated or anything like that. So your invoice number would go in your reference box, generally speaking. In terms of boxes, so you've got from, so that would be your customer name, relatively self-explanatory. So what you'll then see is if you put a customer name in and you use purchase orders, which is something that we won't be running through in this webinar because it can be quite complex, and there are actually other apps that do it a lot better than what Xero does, is you can copy line items from a purchase order to an invoice, and it will also populate all the figures in there for you. So you can then fill in these boxes in exactly the same way. So say it was dated 2nd of March and your terms were 30 days, you can put plus 30 and it will automatically work that out for you. You can then put your invoice number in. You can then attach a copy of the invoice if you wanted to. If you're doing purchases manually, I'd be very impressed. There are a lot of better ways to do it, and we will run through those other ways very shortly as well. So description, you can put your description in exactly the same way as sales. You can then select your account code. So say you want direct expenses, you can start typing. If you know the numbers, you can type the numbers, or if you just want to scroll through, you can scroll through. And you can also add a new account at this stage as well, if you wanted it to be separate, a separate complete code for a new expense. You can then again select your region and any applicable VAT. And then you can save as draft by clicking the blue button, or click approve as well to approve it, and that will put it into your software. You can also assign, so say you bill your expenses on to customers. So you incur costs on behalf of your customer, which you then bill on. You can assign those expenses to a customer. So say again, actually that's a bad example. If I go to Bayside Club and you then tick and you click assign and then click on OK, you'll see it's now been marked as a billable expense. So if I approve this, when it loads, and I then go to raise a sales invoice for Bayside Club. He says, bear with me. Usually it comes up with a box. Did I actually assign it? Bear with me just a second whilst I hop around just to make sure that I've done that correctly. And it didn't assign it because I didn't click save, or did I? Let me just make sure that I've done that correctly. So Bayside Club, and click OK, and update. So go into business and invoices. When I then go to invoice Bayside Club, it should, he says, famous last words, if my internet lets me do so. Here we go. It does, or it used to. I think I had exactly the same problem. Is it will actually say you've got costs assigned which you haven't billed on, and you can actually add them on. I'm not sure if it's because it's in the demo software that it doesn't like it. But what it will allow you to do is it will allow you to add those bills onto your invoices, and it will tell you which one. It will ask you which ones you want to select. But why that isn't working, it's very frustrating. There it is, eventually, we got there. So you see one billable expense can be added, and you can then tick those that you want to add to your invoice. So if you click add items, you can then customize this as well. and you can then add the account that you want it to be. So you wanted it to go to sales, and with any applicable VAT rate, meaning you bill your expenses onto your customers much more efficiently than having to have your purchase on one side and your sale on the other side and having to cross-reference them both against each other. So with your bills, I know I mentioned earlier that I would not recommend having a look at doing it manually. It's very manual, it's very time consuming, it's very boring. There are apps that you can use. So within your Xero subscription, you do actually have access to something called HubDoc. HubDoc is not something that we use internally. We use a separate software which is called Dext, as we find it's a lot more advanced and a lot easier and simpler for people to use. But with HubDoc, what you do is you would upload a copy of an invoice via email. You can do it via a photo. You can email it straight to HubDoc. I think I've already just mentioned that. Or you can also forward it on manually and upload it manually into the login. What I will do is I can run through or have any questions with that later. I'll give you a brief demonstration of Dext, as that's the one that generally what you use. So I've got this open up here. So what that does is you upload your purchase invoices to the software, so HubDoc or Dext. If you want any advice on this, or if you need any help with setting up Dext, or if you'd be interested, be more than happy to help. Dext is something that we would normally charge for. However, HubDoc is free with your Xero subscription. So if it's something you want to explore, more than happy to give any advice if need be. But what you can see, if you click Add Documents at the top in Dext, is you'll have your costs. So you can select who you want to upload. So say it was myself, whether it was one document per file, one document per page. So you can have a PDF document with multiple invoices in one, or you can do auto splitting. So Dext will recognize when there are pages. So say you have two invoices, one's got 2 pages, one's got 1 page. It will automatically split those depending on which one's for which invoice. And what you can do is select the files and upload them manually. You can connect to a supplier through invoice fetch. So if you have a login for a particular supplier, I know it links to Amazon as an example. You can get a list. So the recommended will be based on the suppliers you have in Xero. You can go to the full list. So you can have a whole range of different logins. So you can connect your login. And what you can do is click connect, and it will ask you to enter your Amazon login details as an example. And it will then pull through the invoices from Amazon automatically into your Dext account every once a week, I believe. And it will pull those invoices through into Dext automatically for you. But what Dext will then do, or HubDoc will then do, is to then, it will have a picture of the invoice. So if you take a picture on your phone, it'll appear like so. And it will take all of the information out. So you see it's been uploaded by myself. The date was the 11th of the 9th, but I actually cut the date off in the actual picture that I took. What the supplier is. If there is a document reference, that'll be your invoice number. What category you want it to go to. You can also then categorize it if you wanted it by region as well. And it will then extract any VAT, it'll extract the total. And what you can also do is mark it as paid in Xero as well. So you can then publish it. And what happens when you publish it to Xero is, I know that this didn't work in my last demonstration. So if I publish this to Xero, so I'm just about, it will also warn me that I'm about to create a new supplier. If it is a new supplier. If I hopefully, fingers crossed, this goes in. It can sometimes take a couple of seconds. Let's see if it's in here. Bear with me. It doesn't look like it wants to play ball at the moment. So if I go to all and I search for, no, it doesn't seem to want to work for me. That's why. Bear with me just a second. It's because I'm trying to publish to a demo company. It doesn't like it. But what will happen is you will have an attachment attached to the invoice in Xero. So this little paper will have a 1 next to it, and there'll be a PDF copy of that invoice within Xero. So you then don't have to store that paper and pay for all of those storage costs for all of that paper that you don't need, because all of your data will be in Xero anyway. And that is usually the recommended way that we would suggest to clients doing or putting invoices, purchase invoices into Xero, which is always really handy. What you can then do within Xero, so you can get to your bills in various different sections. So you will see further down, you can get to your bills by clicking bills you need to pay. You can go into business and bills to pay as well. If you click in bills you need to pay, and you'll get exactly the same template as what you do within your purchases section. And you go into awaiting payment. You then have all of your different bills that are currently unpaid. You can then tick down the left-hand side which ones you want to pay or which ones you have paid. And if you click batch payment, yeah, you can then mark them as being paid via whatever bank account. So you then select your payment date from this drop down. So you paid it on the 28th of Feb from your business bank account. So you select which bank account it was paid from. Any details, so you could put payment on, well, you could put whatever you want in this box, 28th of the 2nd. Same as the narrative. I don't believe you have to put anything in here if you don't want to. And what it will then do is it will then create a file. So this will then mark it as paid in Xero. And you can actually export a batch file if you wanted to upload it to your bank as well. And you can send remittances out to your suppliers from Xero as well. So if you click on send remittance, you put in their email addresses, and that will save them going in forward. And it will send them a remittance to say that you paid this invoice. Something that is also very new in Xero is that it now can link to payment software. So what can happen is it can save you heaps of time in having to go into your bank manually to pay all of these things once a month. Because what there is a new software which can link with Xero. There's one called Wise, or there's another called Teleroo. I know that there are a couple more whose names I can't remember off the top of my head. But what they will do is you can mark the invoices as being paid in Xero, and it will automatically pay those invoices for you without you having to go into your bank. It will set up a payment file. Someone can then go in and approve it. So say there was an approval step, so they can go in, review, say they're happy for them to be paid, and then click pay, and it goes straight out to suppliers, meaning there's no manual input other than ticking and marking them as paid in Xero that you have to do to physically pay those invoices. It's incredibly smooth and can save you absolutely heaps of time. If it's something you're interested in, as I mentioned a few times, you're more than happy to get in touch with us afterwards. We'll be more than happy to assist in setting that up or giving you any advice that you need. What you can also do within your bills to pay section in your awaiting payment is if you tick invoices, you can then schedule them as scheduled payments. So say you're planning on paying some on a different date. So you see you've got scheduled payments. If you click on that button and you say you're going to pay all of these invoices by mid-April. And what will happen is it will update this planned date of when you're going to pay. And anyone, you can then sort it then as well to have a look for cash flow purposes as well. So if you click on schedule as well, it will go in there. And if you click on this schedule planned payments, it will then just show those planned payments only. Cool. That was pretty much everything we were going to cover on purchases. I can see we've got a couple of questions in the chat box. Cool. So if you select a due date on a bill, Xero won't automatically pay out of the business bank account on that day. That's where the software like Teller and Wise comes in, and that's new software. It's only been out within the last year or so, where essentially it works almost like a bank account, but it has an open, so it's open with your bank, so they communicate together. Your bank will authorize for that, so for Wise or Teller to take the money out and transfer it on the day that you say that you want it to go out, based on what the payment date you've put into Xero. With Dexter Xero, able to send invoices out to other staff to approve. Generally, you can. So what you'll see in purchases, you've got awaiting approval. So that will also only apply to people who have certain permissions within Xero as well. So some people won't be able to see that. So hopefully that covers that question. In terms of HubDoc, I'm not 100% sure on HubDoc and whether it has the same Amazon login to auto upload. I can go away and double check that, because HubDoc isn't something we use internally too much. I just know about it and I've had brief demos on it, but I know it works in a very similar way to Dext as well. In terms of billable expenses not done to customers, the easiest way to see that, I believe, is if you go into reports, which we can cover later. I believe that there's a billable expenses report somewhere. So you see here, you have a billable expenses report on the left-hand side. If you click on that, that will then list any billable expenses that you haven't yet invoiced onto customers. So you see there, for example, because I didn't actually allocate that in there. Cool. If I've missed anything, I do apologize. What we'll move on to now is your bank section. So within your bank, you can see your bank accounts on your dashboard. So your business bank account and your bank savings account. You can go into accounting and look at your bank accounts from that view too. So you then have options to add a bank account, and all you'd need to do to add is click that button, select which bank you're with, and what Xero will then do is it will ask you to log into your bank, and what will happen is once you've logged into your bank and set up those feeds and accepted it, is the bank transactions will pull through to Xero automatically, meaning that you don't have to manually input and import a bank statement every week, every quarter, every month, however frequently you do it. Completely saving you time on importing and exporting and going into online banking. And it will update once a day, generally. If there are any issues, it will be flagged in Xero as well. But if you wanted to import a bank statement, we'll cover that anyway. Generally speaking, Xero works with majority of banks, other than an odd select few. Is if you can import from here, so you can click on these three dots, and you'll see import a statement, and it will ask you to input a CSV file or an Excel file, which you can select from a list, depending on where you saved it. But generally speaking, we would advise to set up the bank feed to make your life as simple and as smooth and as easy as possible, and less involvement we can get to you, the better. Makes it as easy as possible for you guys and helps you save heaps of time. So to look at your banks, you will then see, if you go into these three dots, you've got a reconciliation report. And if you then select the dates that you want to do, so if you click on this little arrow, you'll see you've got last month, last quarter, last financial year, and so on. So say you wanted to look at the bank statement for last quarter, and you select your bank account. You can only do one at a time in this report. It's really annoying. But what you'll see is your balance per Xero. What will happen if I do this financial year? That's a bit better. So that's actually a bit more info in it. So your balance in Xero, so that's your reconciled balance at the moment, plus anything that you've marked as being paid. So these are the ones that I selected earlier. Plus anything that you've marked as being received, which hasn't cleared the bank yet. And then any bank statement lines which you haven't reconciled against the payment. What will happen is it will then say, here's your bank statement balance based on what's in Xero. Here's your bank statement balance based on your bank feed. And then if there's a difference, it will tell you if there's a difference at the bottom. It also has a couple more reports, so it can show you your bank statement. So if there's a difference, you want to go and investigate, you can go in this, and this will show you what's been imported into Xero. So it will tell you the source. If it's imported, it will say imported. If it's by bank feed, it will say bank feed. And you can then go and look for any gaps in where your missing transactions or duplicated transactions may be. And then your statement exceptions is anything that's been deleted. So that will detail anything that's been deleted or anything that's been manually input into Xero. Cool. Then, best way to reconcile your bank account. You will see we have reconcile items. So it will tell you how many items you haven't reconciled against a invoice yet. So if you click on reconcile, what you'll see is you have your bank statement lines on the left-hand side and any invoices on the right-hand side, or what you want to match it to on the right-hand side. So what you'll see, what Xero tries to do is if it sees that it's got this amount received into the bank, it will look through your sales invoices and go, oh, we've got a sales invoice that matches that amount too. Could this possibly be for this? Could this payment possibly be for this invoice? So you see it says invoice 0035. If your customers are nice and actually put what they're paying on the bank statement line, and you'll see that the reference is invoice 0035. If you're happy, you just click OK, and that essentially marks that invoice as being paid and the bank statement line as being reconciled. What you'll then see, say it's a part payment. So you see here, taking this example, if there's a part payment, you see you've got £100 received, and it's for invoice by the looks of it, 17, it says part. It won't match it because the amounts don't match. But if you click on the match option here, or find and match here, what will happen is it will bring up all of your outstanding invoices. So you see, if I type in City Limousines, it will bring up all of your outstanding invoices for City Limousines. So if you tick the invoice that it relates to, and you see you've got a split button, if you click split, it will then split that invoice to say you paid £100 of your £250 invoice, and you've got £150 left outstanding. If you then click split, it will then go green because those amounts now match. You can click OK up the top to reconcile it and match it, or you can click reconcile at the bottom. Either or does the same thing. So then that will then show that you've then got £150 left outstanding on a £250 invoice because you've received £100. So in the situation with small receipts, so usually we'd put purchase invoices on for absolutely everything that we can, but say you've lost a small receipt or you've got banking fees which don't apply or don't get receipts, you've got this create tab. And what you can do is you can type in who it's to, so Ridgeway Bank. So if I just type that in just to show you, so you see you've got Ridgeway Bank. you want to say that was for bank fees. So you start typing in what code you want it to go to in your accounts and what it's for. So you can type in bank charges or bank fees for, I don't know, so February 2023. Select a region if you want one directly from here, and then select your tax rate, so whether any VAT is applicable. If you click on add details, what that will do is it will drop it down and it will almost present it in a way which your purchase invoices looked. If you wanted to see the transaction in more detail, you can then also assign it to customers from here as well, as I mentioned earlier. But if you then click save, it will then appear green and that transaction will be created. I would only advise using the spend money transaction where you've lost a receipt or you don't get receipts, because essentially you should be, if you use Dext or HubDoc, you should be taking pictures on the app, because you can get the phone app, take pictures on that and upload receipts and then just chuck them in the bin. Then you don't have to worry about it. And if you just click OK, it will then reconcile. Our other examples, so what happens with, so this here, you can create rules. And to create a rule, you see you've got options at the top. On the left-hand side, you've got create bank rule. And what that will do is based on the details in the bank rule itself, so in the bank statement line, sorry, itself, is filled in these fields for you. We tried to say to keep these vague, but also kind of specific. I know it kind of doesn't make sense, but what you'll have is you can then make sure that this captures everything. So you can just say that this, any statement line that contains pay field Cooper Street Bakery, that will capture everything that goes to Cooper Street Bakery. So who the contact is. So you can put Cooper Street Bakery by typing it in. So create, and that will create the contact. You can then split this over fixed lines. So say you wanted some of it was all for one thing. We usually wouldn't use this because generally these transactions aren't going to move. So they are going to move, sorry. So the amounts are going to vary every time. So we always say that 100% of that is going to be for food. As an example, account would be travel, or whatever account you want it to go to. If you have a food account, it can go to food, or if you have subsistence, it can go to subsistence. But if not, usually it goes to travel, whether it has any VAT, and whether you want to apply it to a region. So what you can do is say that you want all of your food to be split 50-50. So it's between two sites. So you put 50% in the end, you want 50% to go to north, and then you want 50% of food to then go to south. And what it will do in Xero, once I've got our 50% in, if I then save this, get rid of that, it will take me back to my bank rec screen. And if I scroll down, you see that it says that there's a rule applied. You can edit the rule. You can choose not to apply the rule, or you can click view details. And what view details will do is tell you where that rule is going. So you'll see it's split £15.75, 50% to north and 50% south every single time, saving you having to put it in. And if you click save, it will then create the transaction. And again, you can then reconcile it. So what you can also then do with your, say you're transferring between bank accounts, like this one as an example, you see you've got a transfer button. If you click transfer, you can then select which bank account you're transferring it to. There will be a list if you have multiple. And you just click OK, and that's essentially a transaction done. It will create a receive money in this situation into the current account and a spend money or an outwards payment from your savings account. So it will do it in both sides. What you then have is you've got your discuss tab. What you can do in the discuss tab is type notes. So say we don't have a receipt, you can say, please can you provide a receipt? And if you hit Control S or click the save button, that comment will be saved for everyone who has access to bank reconciliation screen. So somebody else will log in and see this comment straight away. What you could also do is put the person's initials next to it. Let's either put the comment on there if you wanted to, just so you then have an audit trail when the query's been raised and who it's currently sat with. Then, if moving on to our account transactions, so bank statements, what this tab does is that shows you all of your imported bank statements. It will also show deleted if they were deleted. So you'll see, for example, this one here was duplicated. So it's been deleted. You can also restore it if you decide you want to restore it later for whatever reason. And then you can follow the balance per your bank down here. Transactions. Account transactions is slightly different to bank statements in that it shows things that you've marked as paid and things that you've reconciled. So if there are things like, so these 24 items in here will not appear in this list until you've reconciled them. So if I show you what happens, so if you decide that you've allocated, so say you've got an invoice in Xero and you've then done the create tab to then also put that same transaction in Xero by accident. So actually you decide this one you've allocated against the wrong invoice. No, that's a very bad example because that's a transfer. So say you've allocated this one against an invoice, you decide that you don't want it to be against that invoice and it's actually wrong. You see, if you tick it on the left, you've got this remove and redo button. Again, that's a very bad example. Get it right eventually. You've got this remove and redo button at the top. If you click that remove and redo and click yes, you'll see that 24 at the top in reconcile has now gone back to 25. So what Xero's done is it has unlinked that invoice as being paid against that bank statement line. So you'll now have an extra bank statement line to reconcile, and you will have another unpaid invoice. You can then go in and scroll down. So I believe it was this one here. And you can then select from the list which invoice it related to, or reallocate it as you wish. Cool. In terms of bank statements, I'm pretty sure that was everything I wanted to cover. I'll just pop into, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. Lovely. Cool, I'll give you a few seconds in case anybody wants to add any more questions. If not, I will move on to a brief overview of reports because I'm very well aware of time. Just so you are all aware, Xero does have an app store, and Xero is essentially the central piece to the whole of the app ecosystem. So you can have all different sorts of apps. So if you go on your company name at the top, I should have really mentioned this at the start, so apologies. You see you've got an app store. And what you can do is, I can get rid of this little share box at the top, is it will take you to a whole catalog of apps that you can search for. We're very clued up about our apps and what could be best for you. So if you need any advice on what you want, it can link to a whole range of different things. So you can have a look at different industries. So if you're in, say, you're in a manufacturing, and you want to link some sort of system to it, so a CRM system, there's all different sorts of items within there. You can look at award winners, most popular, different functions. So if you wanted e-commerce, go look at e-commerce as an example. So say you sell online. There's a whole range of different things, and I could probably talk about it all day, and I wouldn't want to bore you to death. But if you need any advice or any help on any apps, or if you're interested in anything, go and have a flick through. If you have a flick through and you need someone to basically say, oh, do you have any experience with using this, or what do you think about this? We'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction and assist, and whatever else you needed help with, whatever you wanted us to implement, train, we are more than happy to facilitate that as well. So before moving on to reports, I don't think there are any more questions at this point, so we should be all good. Just so you're all aware as well, you're more than happy to contact me after the webinar as well, or any further questions or anything. If you don't want to pop them in the chat, perfectly fine by me. If you go to accounting and reports, there are a whole host of different reports within Xero. Who and what you want is completely customized to everyone. So for me to run through each and every single different report is going to take me a good few hours. So what I won't do is I won't go through them in too much detail, but there's pretty much almost anything you can think of in here. They're all completely customizable. So if you go into ones that I generally see used are profit and loss and balance sheet, as well as age payables and receivables. And what that does, so say I run a profit and loss, just to show you a couple of examples, because I don't want to keep everybody more than I have to. So I'm sure you've got very important things to do. You can use this drop down and you can select these preset dates if you wish. So you can do last quarter, last month, and so on, last financial year. If you then wanted to compare it to the previous 3 quarters, you can then do that as well. And this is where your regions come in. So you can then filter it by region, or so say you only wanted to see income and expenses for South. You can then do that and it will show you your income and expenses for South, or whichever one you wish. So you can do multiple at once, you can do one at a time. Say you wanted North and South in one category. You can also look at unassigned. So if you've not assigned a cost, it will then show you in here items that you haven't assigned. If you want to get a breakdown of this figure, you click in it and it will show you what that figure is made up of. And you should then be able to go in and edit it. If you click on that again, it will take you into a copy of the invoice and you can then edit it or do whatever you please. Cool. So what you can also do in your profit and loss is you can edit the layout completely. We don't generally recommend doing this without getting some advice because it can be very complex. So you can regroup things as well. So say you wanted to now move so I know a lot of service-based companies want salaries in cost of sales. So if you then go up and you drag that and drop it into salaries and click update layout, what it will do is it'll move that cost into your direct expenses. So if there was any salaries in there, but we don't have any. Very poor example. But it would essentially have a line which says salaries and it will have that cost included within there going forward. And all you do is then you can save it. So you can create custom reports as well, draft, and you can also publish them. So it will take a snapshot at that point in time. So then if anything changes later, you can then identify what's changed. You can export them to PDF and Excel sheets also. One of our favorite reports, going back to reports, is a management report. So we've got management reports. You have multiple different reports which you have in one little pack. So say you want to have a look at your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your payables, receivables, a little cash summary at any given month. You can then have a look at that. So you'll see opening cash balance and so on. You can add reports to this. So you can completely customize them. So you can add more detailed reports, different reports, whatever you want to add in there. There's a whole host of different ones. You can change the dates. You can change each individual report as well. And you can click into any of these figures which are blue, and it will tell you how that figure's made up. The executive summary I always find quite useful because it gives you some particularly important KPIs, especially when it comes to gross profit and how your debtors and creditors are looking and so on. But there are some much more sophisticated apps that are actually linked to Xero which do reporting a lot better and can actually visualize these things rather than just being figures on a page. You can then choose to compare it to however many months and so on. So it's always, once you've got the initial pack set up, you can just save that, and you just save as a custom report. And if you just make this the default, it will always put it in the format then that you put in on this page. So it will save all of that, but you can actually add and remove reorder reports as well. So you can drag and drop between wherever you want them to be. You can then delete a report. So say these reports you don't like them, you apply that, it will remove them from the pack. Each of the reports are then customizable, as I said, in a different layout if you want to move the layouts around and so on. Always really, really handy. If you want more detail on reports, I could always run through it in more detail. If you have any specific questions, you're more than happy to get in touch after. But for the sake of going through reports, I'm pretty sure that's it. In terms of VAT returns, so I'll have a couple of questions on those before. Unfortunately, we can't show you that because we have to be in live data. So it has to be linked to HMRC. But what would happen if you went into VAT is it would show you a list of your outstanding VAT returns up here, as well as your submitted ones underneath, and you'll be able to click in and it should tell you what your VAT liability is with a little submit button down the bottom. And once you click that, you should be good to go. Cool. Any more questions on reports? If you have anything specific, I can run through it afterwards or later on in terms of reporting, because it's an absolute minefield and everybody has different requirements. VAT return is very easy. As I just mentioned, it will literally give you register, you put your online login details for HMRC in here, it will pull up your outstanding and upcoming and your submitted, and you can view each one and so just click submit at the bottom, and that's as simple as it is. In terms of payroll, you can set up payroll. Payroll isn't something that is my personal speciality. I have used it in Xero before in a previous life. But you can essentially run a payroll through here. And the benefit of doing that in Xero is that it will allow you to automatically post your payroll journals in Xero, meaning that payroll journal input, if you do that yourself, isn't required. It'll already be in there. But to run a payroll, so you see you've got all these different tabs, you've got an overview, employees, whether they have holiday, any timesheets, if people do timesheets. You then got your pay employees, which means do a pay run, basically. Any pension filings, details at the top also. So you'll see if there were any, but obviously I can't because it's a demo company. Any RTI filings, taxings and filings, and then your payroll settings at the bottom. But if you go in pay employees, what you'll then see is you can then run a pay run. So if you do it monthly, you click on monthly and click process. If you do it weekly, you can have different, so you can have multiple different frequencies within one payroll. So if you wanted to run a payroll, so what you'll see is it will give you details. You click into it and who was paid and how much they were paid. You click into it further, it will then take you to the pay slip. As an example, let's say I wanted to create a new pay run. All I would do is I would go on monthly, click process pay run. Ignore that, because you can claim employment allowance through here. It won't let me for some annoying reason. No, it isn't going to let me. So if I click on no, essentially how it would appear as a draft like this one. And if you click on it, again, it will give you the details. And all you'll then do at month end, once you're happy with the payroll even, you can reset the pay run, view the pay slips and so on, download the P32 and download the bank payment file if you wish, click post, and that will submit it to HMRC for you. So you put your HMRC login details in to your payroll settings. I believe it's in payroll settings, if I do remember rightly. So you'll see where your different things are posted to for your journal. As an example, whatever your bank reference is. So you see the things that are optional as well. You can group by employees and so on. What your HMRC login details are, so your different reference numbers and so on as well. What your Gov1 gateway login is. You've got your calendars, which is essentially how often you pay people. Your holidays, so you can say that it's by England and Wales, so that would include your bank holidays as well. Any workplace pension details you'd put in here, who your provider is, what the so on and so forth. And any pay items as well, so that's your bonuses, your standard hours, your overtime and so on. You can select what rates they are, what account they go to, and then it should be all. And if you go to RTI, what that will do is it will show you your submissions to HMRC, if there are any down in this list. In terms of payroll, I'm pretty sure that's the only quick overview I was going to do. We have got a couple of seconds, well, a few minutes if need be. Obviously, I don't want to keep you any longer than I need to. So if anyone has any questions, I'll give you a few moments, but if not, I think that's pretty much it and all I wanted to cover. So thank you all very much for your time. There'll be a recording going out of this later, but if you have any questions, please just pop them in the chat, or if you're more than welcome to leave the webinar at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Just to make you aware, there will be a feedback form popping up once you leave the call. If you could just give us a bit of feedback on the event today, that would be wonderful. Thanks, everyone.